Hi, everyone. Welcome to STARS Network's event on MSCA 2023 Doctoral Network and Postdoctoral Fellowships in Sweden and beyond. We're very excited to have you join us. My name is Sofia Cedergren Booker, and I'm the president of STARS Network. I want to start by thanking our three presenters for being here today to share their expertise, and EURAXESS North America for helping us host this event. Before we get started with the main program, I want to share just a few housekeeping items. So today's event is being recorded and the video will be shared with all participants following the event. And if you have questions during the presentation, you can drop them in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen, and we will do our best to get them answered at the end. You're also welcome to use the chat to introduce yourself to the other participants and interact with one another throughout the talk. I would also like to briefly introduce STARS Network. The Swedish Transatlantic Researchers and Scholars Network works to promote more academic and scientific exchange between North America and Sweden to amplify the impact of our member researchers in their respective fields and to build stronger networks between researchers with a common connection to or interest in Sweden. We currently have members at 72 North American and 26 Swedish universities, and STARS regularly hosts a wide variety of events, including this type of topical event, Swedish networking fikas, etc. We also have a member platform where we share career and relocation tips and opportunities for members who are interested in a research career in North America or Sweden. We also host a membership program where young researchers can connect with a senior scientist in their field to receive help with their professional development. If you're interested in getting access to our member-only resources and activities, you can sign up to become a member on our website, and I will drop that link alongside some other informational pages in the chat. And before I will hand it over to our event chair, Kelly Swanberg, who will introduce our eminent speakers, I would like to give Jackson Howard from EURAXESS North America an opportunity to introduce their organization as well.
Thank you very much, Sophia. I will try to be very quick so we can get to our excellent speakers. I just want to briefly thank you, the whole STARS Network, and all of the fellow presenters who are about to speak momentarily, and take this brief time to introduce or reintroduce to some of the people in the audience EURAXESS services, to all of the researchers that are listening right now, and all of those who support researchers, for a lot of people based at universities that may be working in career development. So as a reminder, we are an official project of the European Union to promote European funding opportunities and strengthen transatlantic collaboration ties. So my colleague, Dr. Daria Buitner-Karajan, and I are based in Washington, D.C., and we cover all of the United States and Canada. And we, as EURAXESS North America, are happy to serve as a point of contact for you on either side of the Atlantic and then connect you further and advance your research careers. So if you're interested in the MSCA fellowships, as everyone attending right now is, or ERC grants from the European Research Council, other bottom-up funding opportunities, we can put you in touch with those European national contact points, including some of the ones you'll hear from later today. And we can help share information, not just on Pillar 1, which I mentioned, but Pillar 2. These are international research consortia that the European Commission funds on a 7-year basis on the Framework Program for Research Innovation. So we're happy to help you find relevant open calls in your field, consortium partners throughout Europe, etc. And as a friendly reminder, US-based researchers can join these consortia and bring their own funding. So if you are a PI, feel free to reach out to us. We can help you network and find European PIs or Europe-based PIs. And then if you have a PI that you're interested in teaching more about this, please also get in touch so we can do so. And as a reminder, in cluster 1 of Pillar 2, I'll be happy to share a graphic through the STARS Network later. That's the health cluster. US-based partners are eligible for funding. Otherwise, you bring your own funding or you just don't access funding. So if you are in the health fields and you're interested in remaining in the US, but joining an international consortium on topics of importance in society, I would highly encourage you to reach out so we can share more information, let you know what the current open calls are, and then share new open calls as they're released in the coming years as well. So to close, I'll just say that we regularly share European job and funding opportunities on the EURAXESS portal. I will share the link along with my colleague in the chat in just a moment. And along with our social media URLs. And finally, I'll share a link to an event we held just a few days ago, promoting Sweden as a research destination that I think will be very complementary to this event. So thank you for your time. Please do feel free to be in touch. And thank you again to the STARS Network for this great opportunity.
Thank you so much, Jackson. I strongly recommend connecting with EURAXESS North America in addition to STARS, because they do some great work. I'll now hand it over to Kelly, who will introduce our event speakers.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Kelly Swanberg. I'm a postdoctoral research scientist in biomedical engineering at Columbia University and director of events for STARS. Our first speakers today are Dr. Isabel Dellacasa Lindberg and Dr. Erik Litborn. Dr. Isabel Dellacasa Lindberg is the Swedish national contact point for the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions, or MSCA. Dr. Lindberg received her doctoral degree in medical science at the Karolinska Institute in Stockholm. Dr. Litborn works for Vinnova, the Swedish governmental agency for innovation systems, and is the Swedish national contact point for Horizon Europe. He received his doctoral degree in analytical chemistry at KTH Royal Institute of Technology. Thank you very much to both speakers for your presence here today to give an overview of the many opportunities that MSCA offers those who are interested in conducting research in Sweden and beyond.
Thank you, Kelly and Sophia and Jackson for the introduction. I'm here with Erik, and we're gonna guide you into the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions. So we will start the presentation now. I think you can see it in a second. Let me know if you cannot follow it properly in the right way. Great. So great, thank you. So the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Action is actually one of EU's oldest programs. It was launched in 1996. This is just to give you an introduction. And under Horizon Europe, the framework program, that will go on from 21 to 27. The estimated budget is 6.6 billion euros. Around 65,000 researchers are estimated to run through the program during these years. And 12 Nobel laureates actually have been on MSCA funding at one point or another in their career, which is quite interesting data, we think. So can take the next slide. When we look a little bit on Europe and US relationship in regards to MSCA, the data that we got from MSCA office is for 21, and those that have been evaluated so far for 2022, it looks a little bit imbalanced when it comes to the participation here. So from outgoing from Europe to US, we have 164 researchers. Incoming from US to Europe under a European fellowship, we have 63 so far. So these figures will be updated, but so you know, there's still room for improvement here, and this is what the European Commission actually wants. And if we look at the success rate for 21, these figures might change also, so they are a little preliminary, but it looks like a success rate of 20%, 20.5% here. But the total average success rate is 15.4. So you're actually quite successful based in US participating here. However, there are room for more balanced figures here, as you can see. Also, as Jackson also mentioned here, that there have been some initiatives taken from the European Commission. And we can see that there were a meeting here in Silicon Valley in March 23. Where the Commissioner Gabriel went there, and they talked about high-level delegation, etc., for 40 entrepreneurs. What was interesting for us here was that they really focused on the call from the EU innovation community to attract talents to Europe. So it's part of this initiative, and also bridge the gap between US and European ecosystems. So we just wanted to mention it because there are some outreach events. Do you want to add something, Erik? No? Yeah. So let's continue. So just to give the agenda that we want to talk now is to give a general introduction to MSCA and the underlying principle, and also give an overview of the program and the calls. That very brief overview here. So MSCA actions, there are 5 actions in MSCA. we were asked to talk about the postdoctoral fellowship. The doctoral networks and the postdoctoral fellowship are the most common one, I would say, most popular one in the program. We also have staff exchanges. We will mention a little bit of staff exchanges, and we have MSCA and citizens, and also co-fund. We can mention a little bit of co-fund if someone is interested in this also. But what is important here to remember is that MSCA is a reference program for doctoral education and postdoctoral training. And what they are looking for is talents. So this is a global program. Talents of the world are welcome to participate here in these in the MSCA actions. The next one. Yeah. So when you want to know more about the MSCA, you have to go to the work program, and the work program goes biannually. So every second year, there's a new work program based on the framework program. So the new work program that will run from 23 to 24 came out in January. You have the link down there. It's very important to read already at this point, to dig into this one and have a look at this one. And I should also mention that it's a total bottom up and open to all domains, MSCA, and the proposals will be evaluated under 8 scientific panels. Next one.
I can add a little bit here. It's important to understand that the Horizon Europe is the tool of the Commission to reach the political goals. So it's not just about funding excellent proposals. They need to be packed, so to say, in a policy context. And this is described in this work program. So it can be a little bit boring and difficult to understand when you start to read it, but I really recommend that you read it several times, because it's important to understand the policy behind it.
So when we look at the MSCA flows, I would say, so MSCA is open, for example, for US researcher to go to Europe. It's actually open for researchers all over the world. It's a worldwide program. So researchers all over the world, you see the purple arrows here, to go to Europe to do some research and innovation training. However, you can go back, or you can go to other worldwide, globally countries to do secondments. That's allowed in this one. You can also do in Europe something called, this is new for the framework program now, the Horizon Europe. You can do a non-academic placement, so it has to be outside of academia, but that you can only do in member states and Horizon Europe associated countries. I'm taking this one. So yeah, so it is also open. Yeah. So the MSCA is also open for European researchers to go to, for instance, as an example, the US, or to go to any country in the world. Actually, that is something that you do under a global fellowship. So when you travel from Europe to a third country or to another country, you will go under a global fellowship, and then you have a mandatory return phase to come back to member state countries, to Europe. That's like a mandatory 12-month mandatory. But you can also do a non-academic placement in Europe along with that, additionally to that. This is new for the new framework program. But you can also do secondments. So when you are on your outgoing phase, you can do secondments there where you are or somewhere else. So what we want to say with these two pictures is that there's a lot of focus on mobility here and transfer of skills and knowledge, etc., etc. So the program is not only about the research itself or the excellent research or the talented researcher. It's about mobility. So I mentioned a few of these. We just wanted to briefly, for those of you that are new to this, talk about the country categories for participations. In the framework program, when you read that one and when you read the work program, there will be a lot of talking about member states, MS, or Horizon Europe associated countries, HEAC. That is countries that have agreements with the European Union to participate in the framework program. But then you have something called third countries, TCs. And that is the rest of the countries that are not Horizon Europe associated countries or member state countries. And US is considered to be a third country. So if you look at the postdoctoral fellowship, I mentioned the European fellowship. The postdoctoral fellowship are mono-beneficiary, which means that the one entity is applying with a fellow. European fellowship is about coming to Europe from any country in the world, or you can be in one member state in Europe or Horizon Europe associated country and move to another Horizon Europe associated country or another member state. So you can come from anywhere in the world or Europe, and then you go to Europe or travel around in Europe. You pick your host basically here. But they normally run from 12 months to 24 months. So these are like up to 2-year projects here. What you can do, which is optional, you can go for a secondment. This is optional. You may go on this one if you want, up to 1/3 of the standard duration. And the secondment you can do anywhere in the world. You can go to a third country, you can stay in Europe, etc. You can also add an additional 6 months. This is new, as I mentioned, an optional non-academic placement, but that you can only do in Europe, in a European member state or Horizon Europe associated country. But then we have what I mentioned also, the global fellowship. This is when you go out from Europe to a third country, somewhere in the world, to US, for instance. So those that can travel from Europe on a global has to be nationals or long-term residents, meaning they have at least a 5-year residence in Europe, in the country, like in a member state or Horizon Europe associated country. So this is something you apply with the host in Europe, and you go to an outgoing phase together with the hosts, an outgoing host in a third country. In this case, for instance, US. That could be for 12 to 24 months as the European one, but there is a mandatory return phase of 12 months back to Europe, member state or Horizon Europe associated country. You can, if you want to, add an additional 6 months non-academic placement in Europe if you want after the 12 to 24 months. You can also, when you are on your outgoing phase in the third country, add a secondment. That is what you apply with when you send your application. You describe that you want to do this. And this secondment can be taking place, of course, in any country in the world or in Europe. So there are some eligibility rules, and these are like extremely important to keep track on. That's why we want you to read the work program properly. So you must have a possession of a PhD at the call deadline. That means successfully defended, but not formally awarded. That is not a requirement that you have formally been awarded this one, but you have to have defended your PhD. There is, of course, a little twitch here, because the formally awarded means that you cannot have been conditionally awarded. So it cannot be an awarded with conditions. So it has to be like, yes, you are awarded, you're clear. But then you can apply. So within, if it's this one. Another rule is like up to 8 years research experience after PhD. So it's open from when you are freshly made doctor up to 8 years after your PhD. So that you also have to check. There is a self-assessment tool for this. When you go to the framework, the links, we have a lot of links in the end. So go and check yourself, or take help from the grants office, etc., to check these eligibility rules. The other one is that you cannot have resided or had your main activity in the country of the beneficiary for a European fellowship, or a host organization, which means the third country, for global fellowship, for more than 12 months in the 36 months before the deadline. And that's the mobility rule. And this is also, you probably need to have a lot of thinking about this depending on your situation. So have a look at these 3 eligibility rules for postdoctoral fellowship.
And I can add that the mobility rule is very, very strict. They're actually counting every day. So have you been in the country you're moving to for 12 months and 1 day, then you are eligible. So it's important to be very careful about this.
We mentioned also there's another program we were asked to talk a little bit about this too, because that could also be something for you. The doctoral networks. The doctoral networks are multi-beneficiary actions that constitutes of 3 different programs calls. So one is the regular doctoral network, which is a consortia of minimum of 3 legal entities. They must recruit at least 1 doctoral students. What they can get is around 360 person months, like each recruited PhD student. And the program can last the maximum 48 months. So they can recruit a US researcher that hasn't obtained a PhD yet, or already started PhD training but hasn't obtained it yet, can participate in these doctoral networks. So there's also another one called industrial doctorates, which is something similar to the regular one, but you are going to be placed 50% in an industrial setting in a company, in a non-academic placement in a company. There you can add additional 180 person months for this one. So the fellowships normally last from 3 to 36 months. There's something also called joint doctorates. That is something that you do with several academic hosts to have a joint, like multiple or more than a multiple, double or multiple PhD awards. So you have several supervisors here. You need a supervisor for each. It's quite complicated, and we want to mention it because some actually are enrolled in these doctoral networks, and it's also open for US PhD students. So what you can also do here is that you can go for a secondment. This is optional. So up to 1/3 of the whole, recruitment, the PhD period, you can go for secondment in a company or anywhere in the world if it's necessary for your training. Yeah. So there are some eligibility rules here too that regards the recruitment. So the doctoral candidate cannot be in possession of a PhD award at the date of the recruitment. However, you can be registered as a PhD student, like already started a project, but you cannot have the PhD award at the date of recruitment. You can be of any nationality to be recruited into a doctoral network. The researchers, or they are called researchers, but the doctoral candidates must be enrolled in a doctoral program in at least 1 member state country or Horizon Europe associated country. If it's a joint doctorate, they must be enrolled in at least 2, of course, because we're talking about two multiple PhD awards. There is a mobility rule here too. You cannot have resided or carry out your main activity in the country of the recruiting beneficiary for more than 12 months, immediately before the recruitment date. So this is not the deadline of the call, this is the recruitment date. So the mobility rule there. Yeah, and I think we still have time. I don't see the clock here, we still have time. Yeah. So the staff exchange, we were also asked to mention a little bit about the staff exchanges. This is also a multi-beneficiary program. We're talking about something about an international consortia here with at least a minimum of 3 legal entities from at least 2 different member states or Horizon Europe associated countries in Europe. But you may also include a third country here, for instance, US. A host in US, and if there are a lot of rules in here, but if it's the same sector, if the same sector applies to at least one of these above the 3 legal entities, you must have a participation from a third country here. But what you do in the staff exchange, this one is open for anyone. Actually, I will talk about it a little bit later also, but these organizations that take part in this international consortia, they select candidates to go for secondments. So that is something that you can do then in academia, in another country, in outside academia, like in Europe, etc., in all kinds of sectors. But you must return again to your sending organization. So there is some requirement for returning, and you can be seconded for 1 to 12 months, for instance, to learn a new technique or method or some training. And if we look at the next slide, the eligibility rules here for the secondments, then the supported researchers, they're called supported researchers here, can be at any career stage. So you can be from a PhD candidate to a postdoctoral researcher. You can also be like an administrative staff or technical staff or managerial staff, etc. But you must be involved in research and innovation activities. So the program lasts for 48 months, and you, as I said, you can be of any nationality. And there is, of course, a mobility rule here too. So seconded staff must be engaged in or linked to research and innovation activities at their sending organization for at least 1 month prior to the secondment. So, and also that they should return to the sending organization after the secondment, because the aim is to pass on the knowledge that they have gained, and also probably established more collaboration that also should be beneficial for the sending organization. And we also set some important links for you here. These are, as you can see, quite a lot. I would say all of these are important to have a look at if you want to go for at least a postdoctoral fellowship. So have a good read, and I think that was our last. And also I should stress also, I think we did, but place an early contact with the University Grants Office at the administrating organization. That is very early, like where you want to go, the host that you apply with. This is really important. Yeah.
Yes.
And yeah, you want to add something?
Yeah, I can give some additional information here. I mean, our aim here is to give you a brief overview, and there is a lot of details here. But the way we as NCPs are working here is that we have most of our contacts with intermediates in Sweden. These are typical persons working at grants offices, and here we have Ying that is representing this, and they are working a lot with this and have a lot of experiences, and they also can add administrative information that is required when you are planning a project. But so there is a lot of help here, and if the grants offices have problems, they usually contact us as NCPs, and then we, in most cases, can solve some issues or clear out some question marks. But we are also members in an NCP network between all the NCPs working with Marie Curie's. And we also have a direct line to the Commission if there are really tricky questions. So there is a lot of support available, including EURAXESS. And but we can only help if you are taking an early contact. If you contact us a week before deadline, then we will assume that you are applying for the next year and not this year's call. I would stress the last link that we have here, and that is a project called the MSCA Net, and that is the NCP network that has produced a lot of materials. And at that link, there are a lot of handbooks that describes in principle the same thing as the Commission is describing in their documentation, but it's easier to understand it. So this is a really, really good link if you want to read more. And with that, I think we have used our time for this session.
And I would like to say also that we added some pictures here from Pixabay it's free, so it's courtesy free. So in case anyone asks, so these are from pixabay.com.
Okay, thank you very much for that excellent talk and introduction to the MSCA, pieces of the MSCA program. So we do see some questions in the chat or the question and answer. We will leave those to the end during our Q&A session. Now we're going to move on to our next speaker, who is Dr. Ying Zhao, Grant Advisor for the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions MSCA in the Grants Office of the Karolinska Institute, where she also received her doctoral degree in medicine and cancer. Thank you, Dr. Zhao, for your time and energy here today to provide your insights on the MSCA program, as well as how to approach it as an applicant.
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you all of the organizers for inviting me. Going to start by sharing my screen. All right, you see the correct screen? Yes. All right, so I will share some experience from a grant specialist perspective from Karolinska Institutet. And this is our experience in hosting MSCA researchers. We have hosted a fair amount throughout the years. So Karolinska Institutet is a medical university. We offer a broad range of education in medicine and health sciences, and we account for the single largest share of all academic medical research conducted in Sweden. And for those of you who are not very familiar with Karolinska Institutet, you might think about the Nobel Prize every year. So the Nobel Assembly at KI is responsible for selecting the Nobel Prize laureates in physiology or medicine every year. We have hosted quite many Marie Curie projects throughout the years. And so during the past 10 years, we have hosted 94 projects that were funded by the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions. And through these projects, we have trained 61 Marie Curie PhD students and also 47 Marie Curie postdocs. And of these, there are a handful of PhD students and 4 postdocs from North America. And by that, I mean citizenship. So we've had also Swedish citizens who have been in North America and have returned to Sweden through the Marie Curie program. So it's a very appreciated postdoc program for both PhD students and postdocs. So from an applicant's perspective, then, you've heard the talk from Erik and from Isabel. So you've got an idea for what the Marie Curie program offers throughout its different sub-programs. So from an applicant's perspective, then you think maybe, oh yes, I am interested in the Marie Curie, and I'm going to focus on the postdoc program today. So the first thing that you really want to make sure, like Isabel and Erik mentioned, is that whether you are really eligible. So besides the degree criteria, you really want to check that you are mobility-wise also eligible for the country that you are going to. And as Erik mentioned, you want to count the exact days. So there's also the 8-year research experience rule. So you really want to make sure that you still fit within the 8-year criteria. And there is the self-assessment tool here also with a link, and also from Isabel and Erik's presentation. So from a career stage point of view, those of you who are freshly graduated from your doctorate program and maybe you have done one postdoc, then the Marie Curie Postdoc Fellowship sounds like a very interesting alternative for you. But for those of you who have maybe already done, for example, 2 postdoc, you would really want to think that maybe, do you really want to apply for the Marie Curie to do a 3rd postdoc? Or maybe you should start considering to apply to other starting grants, for example, the ERC, to start establishing yourself as an independent researcher, an independent PI. And then, of course, there's the question that you've seen that the Marie Curie program attracts excellent researchers internationally. So you want to think about which country you would prefer to go to. For example, if you are interested in France, or maybe you want to go to Spain, or maybe you want to come to Sweden that we are promoting today. So in terms of that, you might consider, you maybe have already a PI that you're interested in their research and expertise area. And when you are looking for a PI, you would want to consider that the PI's expertise areas should be complementary to those of yours, meaning that the PI that you choose to apply for the Marie Curie with should give you enough added value in terms of expertise and experience. you want to contact the grants office or the research support at the organization that you are interested in, because they can give you accurate information on whether they have internal regulations and what kind of documents and signatures you might need in advance to be able to send in your application to the Marie Curie program. And also they usually do a check on your PI's operational and financial capacity. And speaking of operational and financial capacity, the PI who you choose as your supervisor for the Marie Curie postdoc fellowships, not only should they support you scientifically, but also for the Marie Curie postdoc projects at most places in Sweden, KI included, is that the project budget does not cover itself in expenses. So besides the scientific support that your PI should provide for you, they also need to assess whether they have the financial capacity to host a project like this. We are talking about host organizations. So you are thinking about maybe you want to do your postdoc with a university or with another organization, so you want to really find out which legal entity you are going to apply with if you're interested. And also, as we mentioned earlier, really contact the research support or grants office in good time. And an example of this is that, for example, at KI, we are a medical university, so we have a lot of projects to do with the and collaborations with the university hospital. However, our university hospital is not the same legal entity as the university, as our research institute. So they are separate. And a lot of our researchers come to centers of excellences. For example, a SciLife lab has been established for quite a few years now. They're very popular within the biotech and also life science. So our researchers who come to the SciLife lab really need to think about which university they're going to apply for their fellowship with, because SciLife lab is a research community that involves 4 different universities. So check with your PI, check with your grants office in which legal entity you should be applying your Marie Curie postdoc fellowship with. So I've come to the part where I will show you how the allowances are. I think this is a budget issue and very interesting for most of our fellows, because Marie Curie pays out its budget in different categories, and 3 of which goes to the salary categories for the postdocs and also the PhD students. So one of these allowances is called the living allowance. This is the basic salary that is paid out to the fellows. And I have an example here that the amount that you would see on an employment contract, for example, the number on there is vastly different from the numbers that the European Commission shows on its homepage. And this is when a lot of people would get really upset because the numbers don't match whatsoever. But so what happens is that the amount that you would see, for example, on a KI postdoc or a KI PhD student employment contract, is that number that you see, you still have to pay an income tax of approximately 30%. And this is very common in Sweden. You take that part away, and what is left over is your pocket money. But however, what you don't see on the pay slip, but that it does come from the gross amount from the living allowance paid out by the European Commission, is that a big chunk of it goes to the non-wage labor cost, which is the social charge. We call it social charges in Sweden. And that is quite high in Sweden. So from the gross amount, all of these different chunks will be paid out either to the government or to your salary. And this is why the number that you receive as pocket money is very different from the numbers on the European Commission's homepage. And the other 2 allowances are the mobility allowance, which is a compensation given to all of the fellows who move to the new country, either to do their PhD or to do their postdoc with Marie Curie. And if they should have family, they will also be getting a family allowance. And it is the same story here, that the amount of the mobility and family allowances on the employment contract, you have to pay an income tax of approximately 30%, and what is left from there would be your pocket money. But there's also a chunk that is paid to the government as employer's tax or payroll tax. So with that in mind, I hope that this provides some kind of basic understanding that what you see on the Marie Curie program, in the work program, and on the pages from the European Commission is going to be very different from the pocket money that you receive. So this is just an idea, so that it's not going to be a vast disappointment. So I'm going to move on with some advice from our past experience from our grants office. Is like Erik and Isabel mentioned, that really start early with everything. Contact the PIs early, contact your grants offices early, and especially the organization's support staff. When it comes to the project, the postdoc fellow should decide together with the PI about the research project. And this is because the Marie Curie postdoc fellowships requires that both the fellow and the PI should both agree on the contents of the proposal. And you don't want to go ahead and write a project, and then when you speak to the PI, that person has a completely different idea and you have to rewrite everything. It is a very complex proposal to write. It's very different from the other, from the common scientific applications that you write that only focuses on the science. So the Marie Skłodowska-Curie project should be a project that is of multi or interdiscipline aspect. And also you will need to describe your career perspective and the plans that you have for your career. So what we can say about this is that when you design your research project for the Marie Curie, you want to have research objectives that are new. And this is because we advise all of our researchers to not use the same proposal and send it into different funding agencies for different applications. And the reasons for this is that in the unlikely scenario, but not impossible, that should you be awarded from several different funding agencies, then if you use the same proposal with exactly the same research project, then you will need to say no to one of them, because there is no funding agency that would want to fund something that someone else has already funded. And Marie Curie treats its fellows very nicely. For those who have family, you are entitled to a family allowance. And you want to check the work program and the guide for applicants for the definition of family. So family is either marriage or a relationship of equal that is equivalent to that of a marriage, or if you have children that you are supporting, which means that in different countries, this can have different meanings. But in Sweden, there is something called sambo, meaning that you live together with a partner in the same that you are registered in the same address, then you are entitled to family allowance. But however, this does not cover if you are registered with a friend. If you're sharing an apartment with your friend, then you're not entitled to family allowance. So you really want to check the regulations of the country that you are going to. And also the parental leave in Sweden, you are entitled to quite a long period of time for parental leave. But for those who are thinking about taking parental leave during the Marie Curie project, you want to check with the HR for regulations well in advance. So not to have the situation where you tell people that tomorrow I'm going on parental leave, because that you need to leave the HR and the document and paperwork to be done in advance, so that you can get the social benefits that you would want to have. So with that, I am going to finish up. And Sweden is a beautiful country, especially in the summer, and it is good for doing research. And with that, I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Ying, and thank you also to Isabel and Erik for presenting on these programs. We're gonna start with the Q&A, and we will begin with some of the questions that were submitted in the registration for the event. So Ying or Isabel and Erik, feel free to jump in whenever you feel urged. So the first question is about where you can, which country you can apply at. So can I use Marie Curie to return to my career in a country where I recently moved to live with my family?
Oh, so we are laughing. It's a little bit, the mobility rule has to be, of course, be, fulfilled here. So it's a little bit case by case. It's difficult to, if it's a general one, but of course, I mean, you can use the Marie Curie to move back to a country if you have been, abroad, but you cannot have stayed there for 12 months before, the last 36 months period, etc. So there used to be in the previous framework program, like a reintegration grant that you could go for, like to reintegrate into Europe, but that doesn't exist anymore. So you will have to use the normal European fellowship. But of course, the eligibility criteria needs to be fulfilled here, and like the 8-year rule and etc.
The other question we received is about the UK, who recently left the European Union. Is the UK considered inside the European Fellowship or global?
Yeah, this is a very, very common question. And I think that most of you have heard about the Brexit. And as NCPs, we usually ask everyone to contact the UK NCPs to get the info of the day, so to say. But as it is now, UK is regarded as an associated country. And then if you are recommended funding, then they will look at the status when you sign the contract. And if they are associated country or a third country at that moment. And related to that is that the UK government will go in and fund the project if the status will prevent funding from the European Commission.
So this is why it's so important to get early contact with the grants office, because they can help you to keep track on the latest updates that come from the UK RI office, the NCPs and the people that work there.
The last question we received in the registration, and then we'll move on to some of the Q&A, is, are the preliminary data necessary, and what is considered a good publication record?
I mean, I used to evaluate in the previous framework for me. I wasn't like an evaluator for individual fellowship, which is equivalent to the postdoctoral fellowship. And I would say that you don't need preliminary data here, but this is not this type of grant, but it's like, these are highly competitive grants. I mean, highly competitive, like Ying mentioned also, it's not only about the science here, it's about the perfect match between you and the host organization and the supervisor. It has to be really clearly written, the proposal, in order to be competitive here. This year was like more than 8,000 applications to, like 2022, 8,000 applications to postdoc fellowship. So we're talking about a huge amount of really good proposals here. So, and the publication, the good publication record is like normally for this bottom-up excellence funding calls, is that it needs to match what you want to do. You need to prove that like you are the best person to conduct this excellent research proposal. So it's not about a high impact journal thing, there's a lot of debating about that. It's more like it has to be peer reviewed, of course. The reviewers will look into this, they will evaluate this. These are expert evaluators. So common sense here, I would say. And there's no like magic into this. If you have a good proposal, you can be there fighting. There's a competition. You can fight with the other really good scientists. These are the talents of the world. Apply for this. I don't know if you want to add something from your perspective.
No, I'm thinking that maybe Ying could add something. Maybe you get these kind of questions more often than we get as NCPs.
It's basically what Isabel said. So a lot of people are asking about the impact factor, and right now there are a lot of discussions on that. Using that as the sole measure is not really, it's not fair to everyone and to all the areas of research. But in the end, I think it's about the kind of career that you've had at that particular stage of your career. The reviews that we have seen is that the evaluators are, of course, instructed to pay attention to the career stage that the fellow is in, to compare that with the common, what everybody else has. But if there are deviations from what they expect, then there would be a comment.
Great, thank you so much. So we'll start with some of the questions that we received, and hopefully we will be able to get through all of them. There's one more question about the mobility, so I guess this is it's a tough one to wrap your head around. So I'm currently based in the US and wish to return to France, the country where I obtained my PhD 5 years ago. Can I apply for MSCA to return to France if I resided there in the past? And that goes back to the days, counting the days.
Yeah.
Yes. So check the mobility rule and really count the days.
Yeah.
Perfect. And here's another question. We talked a lot about the research office at the host organization. And Carla asks, is there any restrictions on the host organization? The one I contacted does not have previous experience with MSCA.
I would say that it's about context. I mean, all parts need to match to each other. So if a host organization has an equipment that is unique, I mean, it's not available everywhere, this might be an argue why you choose it. But it can also be that you have a perfect supervisor, but it can also be what kind of supervision and support can the organization offer to the fellow. So you can't pinpoint an individual thing. So it's about a good context of everything.
I would say if the host organization is really unexperienced with MSCA, I would put even more effort into have an early dialogue. And what you need at an early stage is to bring on, like Ying mentioned, like HR, financial staff, etc. Because you need to do the calculations. You need to know, you need to follow the rules for recruitment. So each member state have their own rules for recruitment, like how you actually set up the employment contract, etc. But MSCA has very strict rules on what these contracts must, fulfill. They also have some conditions there if you are granted. And you need to have an early dialogue. And like Ying also mentioned, these are not like 100% fully supported. So you really need to have some kind of support from the university, from the host organizations. And that has to be dealt with before you write this extensive application and put a lot of hours into it. And then maybe you are granted also. And then at the end, it's like, oh no, we cannot fund this. You cannot come here, whatever. So if they are unexperienced, I would say to have and bring aboard NCPs, etc. If they don't have a grants office that are experienced. What do you say, Ying? I would say that this would be my advice.
Yes, I agree. I would not think that there are any restrictions at all for the type of organization, because so public sector, non-academic, anything. But I think for the most important thing is that as a funding agency, they would like to see that you can deliver, that you, the fellow, the PI, together with the PI and your host organization are going to be able to deliver the project that you propose. And should this be a large organization with a lot of experience, fine. But if, like Isabel and Erik said, that if they have no previous experience hosting a Marie Curie project, you really need to contact everyone and ask them, so that from the different support staff, so that they think that they can assess that they actually can deliver the project.
From the evaluation point, the evaluators will not look into like, oh yeah, this one, oh, we cannot grant this project because the host organization is not experienced. So they will look, like Erik said, on the match. So the supervisor, I must stress this, that postdoctoral fellowship is not the normal postdoc funding scheme. This is not about the postdoctoral fellowship. It's also about the hosting organization, the supervisor, the identified supervisor. You actually put in the CV of the supervisor here also in this call. So it's actually evaluated. And it needs to be like clear that the knowledge transfer between those two are, excellent. And that the hosting organization is excellent, provides excellent environment. The secondments, if you add them, needs to be excellent. They need to add value. It just to put in a secondment just because it, oh, maybe it look good, I might get granted if I put in something. If it doesn't make sense, if it's not adding any value, don't put it in. And if you want to put in a secondment or non-academic placement, early contacts. So you need to have them on board. It needs to be clear why you bring them in. They need to be known. You can just put a name there. So that would be my advice.
And from a post-contract or post-award perspective, I think for an inexperienced organization, they will need a lot of, they will need help from networking with other organizations, so that they can get an answer to the questions and the challenges that they might face, because they haven't hosted a Marie Curie project before.
Great. The next question we have is, for the 8 years research experience rule, does 1 year teaching at a university, mostly not doing research, still count towards those 8 years?
Nope.
No. Quick and easy. Great.
Follow the assessment tool, that they have a self-assessment tool for this, and you can get a lot of knowledge, information from what you can deduct.
And we can share all the links that were referenced in the presentations after the event. Great. All right, we'll move quickly on to the next one because we have a few more and I would like to get to all of them. Can duties/funding of or for the return host in a global fellowship be somehow shared, for instance, by a university and an international research institution in my home country, when it is explained which value would be added to the research project? I'm not sure if that's clear to you, but I think it's about, can you split the fellowship between two institutions rather than just having the one?
If this is a global fellowship, so you need to go to a third country. So you need to apply with a third country host. So both hosts, your sending host or your European host is identified, and that would be the administrating organization. And your third host will also be like your host with a supervisor, etc. But then you can do secondments, etc. You can do this like secondments if you need to do something that add value to the project. I don't know if that's would you like to add something, Ying or Erik, to this?
But the secondments are not allowed during the return phase. I'm not sure if that's what the question was about right? Because for the outgoing phase of a global fellowship, you are allowed to have secondments, but during the return phase, you're not allowed to have secondments. So splitting the cost for somewhere that you're not allowed to go.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean,
do I understand the question?
Yeah, one way to handle it is actually to add a non-academic placement, if that will be a benefit for the career development and the project.
Yeah.
I mean, then you can add additionally 6 months to this one. So, but questions like this are a little bit tricky because you really need to go into the documentation and read it several times. So
for global fellowship, you can do a secondment before you go out for up to 3 months. So, but I don't know if that's enough, but I mean, But yeah, there are some room, like as they say, but not on secondments. When you return, it's not allowed, only placement. But you can take some 3 months, up to 3 months secondment before you go out in Europe. That's would help.
Yeah. Then you can also include some short visits, but
Yes.
it's there are different purposes behind a visit and a secondment.
Yeah.
So secondment, that's you're doing a secondment with a specific goal. So visit is more like visits.
We are at time, and I want to be respectful of each of you, especially those in Sweden who are joining us in the evening. So thank you so much for joining STARS event today on MSCA fellowships. I learned a lot, and I hope you did too. We will share the recording with all the participants after the event. And the questions that we didn't have a chance to answer, we will see if we can send out in written form after the event. So thank you so much for joining, and have a great day. Bye.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.